We are staring straight at what could become one of the largest financial reversals in modern American history. Not a market crash, not a bank failure, a legal ruling. A potential $2 trillion bomb buried deep inside America's trade policy. And whether it explodes depends on one thing: what the Supreme Court decides next. As of December 2025, the so-called tariff debacle has reached a breaking point. This is no longer just an argument about trade or whether tariffs are good or bad. This is about what happens if the highest court decides the government never had the authority to collect them in the first place. Because if that happens, the fallout doesn't land in Washington. It lands in your wallet. Here's the nightmare scenario. Americans paid higher prices at the register because tariffs drove up costs. Those tariffs were collected by the federal government. Now, if the court rules them illegal, that money doesn't come back to you. It goes back to corporations. You know, the stores where you do your shopping. They are reimbursed. The question isn't just whether tariffs survive. It's whether the American consumer gets quietly robbed 3 times over. Let's break this down. The legal fight centers on how these tariffs were imposed. Instead of going through Congress, the Trump administration used an obscure law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. The IEEPA was designed for genuine national emergencies: war, terrorism, catastrophic threats. But it was used to declare an open-ended economic emergency and impose massive import taxes. In November 2025, the Supreme Court heard arguments challenging that move. And what stunned legal analysts was this: even conservative justices sounded uneasy. The core question they're wrestling with is dangerous in its simplicity. Can a president declare an emergency, bypass Congress, and tax the public indefinitely? If the court says no, everything changes. Because by then, the government has already collected hundreds of billions of dollars. Some estimates push total exposure toward $2 trillion when penalties, interest, and extended tariff collections are included. Refunding that money would detonate the federal deficit overnight. The 2025 deficit alone is already hovering around $1.8 trillion. Add refunds on top of that, and the math gets ugly fast. That's why the administration is warning of economic disaster if the tariffs are overturned. But here's where it gets personal. This isn't just about government finances. This is about what economists are calling the double dip and the triple dip. The double dip already happened. In 2025, retailers raised prices because tariffs raised costs. You paid more for food, electronics, appliances, tires, and household goods. That money came out of your pocket. Now imagine the tariffs are ruled illegal. Who gets the refund? Not you. The refund goes to the importer of record, the corporation, the retailers. To protect their interests, major companies like Costco have already filed lawsuits to preserve their legal right to refunds if the Supreme Court declares the 2025 tariffs illegal. They are pressing to get their money back. Remember, they already took your money at the register. Then they get the government's money back. That's the double dip. And then comes the triple dip. There is no legal guarantee, none, that prices have to come back down. Retailers can pocket the refund and keep prices right where they are. Same high prices. Corporate refund checks. Consumer loses again. On December 21st, the administration's own National Economic Council director, Kevin Hassett, admitted publicly that ensuring refunds actually reach consumers would be an administrative mess. That's bureaucratic language for "don't count on it." Corporations assume this ends there. They're wrong. Because history shows what happens when Americans feel cheated. Not politically, but personally. We've seen this movie before. In 2023, Bud Light learned the hard way what happens when a brand loses the trust of its customers. One marketing decision triggered a boycott so effective that the brand lost its 20-year run as America's top beer. Sales collapsed by nearly 40%. They have never fully recovered. That wasn't about politics. It was about fairness. About people feeling disrespected and ignored. Now imagine when this headline hits. Major retailers pocket billions in tariff refunds while prices stay high. That's not a MAGA boycott. That's not left versus right. That's a consumer revolt. Costco, Walmart, Target, Amazon. Any retailer caught triple-dipping risks something worse than regulation. They risk permanent habit change. Once consumers leave, they don't always come back. Meanwhile, the White House argues that striking down tariffs would leave the U.S. financially defenseless, that it would remove leverage, crash markets, and weaken national security. Critics respond with a darker warning. The real national security threat isn't losing tariff revenue. It's governing by emergency. If the government has to borrow trillions to fund refunds at today's interest rates, the dollar weakens, inflation pressures rise, and ordinary Americans pay again, this time through higher borrowing costs and reduced purchasing power. Either way, there is no clean exit. We are now in uncharted territory. If the Supreme Court upholds the tariffs, it may do so not because they're legal, but because the alternative detonates the budget. If the court strikes them down, corporations may walk away with a historic windfall while consumers get nothing but receipts. And if retailers push their luck, they could trigger the next great boycott wave, one driven not by ideology, but by raw economic betrayal. The decision drops in January. Until then, watch the shelves, watch the prices, and watch who blinks first. Because this isn't just a trade fight anymore. It's a test of whether the American consumer still has any leverage left. If Costco and other retailers get a refund, should consumers get that money back? Tell me what you think in the comments. And subscribe, because when the ruling hits, the real fallout begins.